The train's whistle screamed through the desert air as Natalie Zimmerman pressed her forehead against the window, watching Pennsylvania disappear with every mile that carried her westward, away from the man who had shattered her heart into pieces too small to count. It was June of 1878, and the Arizona Territory stretched before her like an unwritten page, raw and unforgiving and exactly what she needed. Thomas Whitmore had promised her forever, had slipped a ring on her finger in her parents' parlor, had kissed her with what she believed was genuine love. Then she had discovered him in the arms of her own cousin, Margaret, their bodies tangled together in the library, where Natalie had gone to retrieve a book of poetry. The image burned in her mind no matter how hard she tried to forget it. Thomas had stammered excuses, Margaret had cried crocodile tears, and Natalie had packed her belongings that very night. Her aunt, Eleanor Pritchard, had written months ago about the growing town of Wickenburg, Arizona Territory, where she ran a boarding house for travelers and miners. Eleanor had always been the adventurous one in the family, heading west after her husband died, carving out a new life in a place most Eastern women would consider barbaric. When Natalie wrote to her aunt about needing to leave Pennsylvania to escape the suffocating pity and gossip, Eleanor had sent train fare and a simple message: "Come build a new life where no one knows your past." The train pulled into Wickenburg 3 days later, and Natalie stepped onto the platform with 2 trunks and a determination to never let another man close to her heart. The June heat hit her like a physical force, so different from the mild Pennsylvania summer she had left behind. The town sprawled before her, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures that looked temporary, as if the whole place might blow away in a strong wind. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and mysterious against the brilliant blue sky. Natalie. Her aunt rushed forward, arms outstretched. Eleanor was 52, her face weathered by the desert sun but her eyes bright with life. "Oh, my dear girl, you made it safely." They embraced, and Natalie felt something inside her chest loosen just slightly. "Thank you for the ticket, Aunt Eleanor. I cannot tell you how much I needed to leave." "We will not speak of him here," Eleanor said firmly, taking one of Natalie's bags. "In Wickenburg, you can be whoever you want to be. The past stays where you leave it." The boarding house sat on the main street, a 2-story building with a wide porch and shutters painted a cheerful yellow. Inside, it smelled of bread and coffee, and Natalie felt her shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. Eleanor showed her to a small room on the 2nd floor with a window overlooking the street. "Rest today," Eleanor instructed. "Tomorrow, we will talk about what you would like to do. There is a schoolteacher position opening in the fall, or you could help me run the boarding house. Wickenburg needs women with education and backbone, and you have both." Natalie unpacked her belongings slowly, hanging her dresses in the narrow wardrobe, arranging her books on the small shelf by the bed. She caught sight of herself in the mirror above the washstand. At 22, she looked older than she had a month ago. Her dark hair, usually carefully pinned, had come loose during the journey. Her hazel eyes, which Thomas had once called luminous, looked flat and tired. She was tall for a woman, nearly 5 feet 8 inches, which had always made her feel awkward at social gatherings back home. Perhaps here, in this rough territory, being tall would be less of a disadvantage. The next morning, Eleanor put her to work immediately. "Idle hands make for a troubled mind," her aunt said, handing her an apron. "We have 7 boarders right now, and they will want a good breakfast." Natalie threw herself into the work, helping to cook eggs and bacon, serving coffee, clearing plates. The boarders were a mixture of miners, merchants, and drifters, most of them polite enough, though their rough manners and loud conversations were a far cry from the refined dining she was accustomed to. One man, a grizzled prospector named Charlie Benton, tried to engage her in conversation about the silver strikes up north, but Natalie kept her responses brief. She was not here to make friends, especially not male friends. A week passed, then two. Natalie fell into the rhythm of boarding house life, rising before dawn to help with breakfast, spending her afternoons helping with laundry and mending, serving dinner in the evening. Eleanor was right. The work kept her mind occupied, though at night, alone in her room, the memories of Thomas's betrayal would creep back in, making sleep difficult. On a sweltering afternoon in early July, Eleanor asked Natalie to take the wagon into town to pick up supplies from the general store. "The list is long, but Henry at the store will help you load everything. Take your time, get to know the town a bit." Natalie had been in Wickenburg for nearly 3 weeks, but had not ventured much beyond the boarding house. She changed into a practical cotton dress, pinned her hat securely, and climbed onto the wagon seat. The 2 horses, Molly and Pete, were gentle creatures, and Eleanor had shown her how to handle the reins. The general store was busy, filled with people stocking up on supplies. Natalie presented her list to Henry Morrison, the proprietor, a balding man with kind eyes who reminded her of her father. "This will take me about 20 minutes to gather, Miss Zimmerman," he said. "You are welcome to look around or sit on the porch where it is cooler." Natalie chose the porch, settling onto a bench in the shade. Across the street, she could see the saloon, the sheriff's office, and a building that advertised itself as a land office. Men on horseback rode past, their faces shaded by wide-brimmed hats. A woman in a faded dress shooed chickens from her front step. This was her new world, so different from Philadelphia's cobblestone streets and gas lamps. She was watching a dust devil spin itself across the street when she heard raised voices from inside the store. A man's voice, deep and frustrated. "Henry, I need the supplies today. The cattle drive starts tomorrow, and I cannot have my men going hungry because I am short on provisions." "Mr. Keller, I understand, but you still owe me $42 from last month. I cannot keep extending credit indefinitely." "You will have your money as soon as we sell the herd in Prescott. You know I am good for it." Natalie tried not to listen, but the voices carried through the open door. She focused on the mountains in the distance, trying to give them their privacy, but curiosity got the better of her. Through the doorway, she could see a tall man gesturing with his hat, his back to her. He wore dusty work clothes, and even from behind, she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I will give you half now," the man said, and she heard the clink of coins. $21. "The rest when I return. That is the best I can do, Henry." There was a long pause. "All right, Keller, but this is the last time. I have my own bills to pay." The man turned, and Natalie got her first clear look at him. He was probably in his late 20s, with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of wheat. His face was angular, all sharp lines and strong jaw, with eyes so blue they were startling against his tanned complexion. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscled build of someone who worked hard for a living. He caught her staring and touched the brim of his hat politely before striding past her down the porch steps. She watched him walk to a beautiful chestnut horse tied to the hitching post, his movements confident and fluid. He loaded supplies into his saddlebags, checked the cinch on his saddle, then swung up onto the horse with an easy grace. For just a moment he glanced back at the store, and his eyes met hers again. There was something in that look, an assessment perhaps, or maybe just acknowledgement. Then he rode off down the street, leaving a small cloud of dust in his wake. "Miss Zimmerman," Henry appeared in the doorway. "Your supplies are ready. I will help you load them." Natalie pushed the cowboy from her mind and helped Henry carry sacks of flour, sugar, coffee, and various other goods to the wagon. It took several trips, and by the time they finished, she was grateful for the canteen of water Alina had packed for her. "That will be $8.30, Henry said, consulting his ledger. Natalie paid him from the household money Alina had given her and climbed back onto the wagon seat. The ride back to the boarding house was uneventful, but she found her thoughts drifting to the man in the store. Keller, Henry had called him. He had been short on money, but determined to provide for his men. There had been no wheedling in his voice, no attempt at manipulation, just a straightforward negotiation between two men who knew each other. It reminded her that not all men were like Thomas, though she quickly pushed that thought away. She was not here to analyze men or their character. She was here to forget. That evening, as she served dinner to the boarders, Charlie Benton mentioned a cattle drive leaving the next day. "Keller Zane is taking about 300 head up to Prescott," he said, sopping up gravy with a piece of bread. "Good man, Keller. Honest as they come, even if he is land poor right now." "What does that mean?" Natalie asked before she could stop herself. "Means he has a ranch but not much cash money," Charlie explained. "His daddy died 2 years back, left him the property and a pile of debt. Keller has been working himself near to death trying to make it profitable again. This cattle drive could turn things around for him if the prices hold." Alina shot Natalie a knowing look, but Natalie ignored it, retreating to the kitchen to fetch more coffee. She did not care about Keller Zane or his financial troubles. She did not care about any man's troubles. She was here to work, to heal, and to build a life that did not revolve around romantic notions that only led to heartbreak. But that night, lying in bed with the window open to catch any hint of a breeze, she found herself thinking about blue eyes and the proud set of shoulders that refused to beg. She told herself it meant nothing, that she was simply bored and her mind was latching onto anything novel. Tomorrow she would forget all about the cowboy in the general store, except she did not forget. Over the next 2 weeks, she found herself asking casual questions about the Zane Ranch, about cattle drives, about the business of ranching in the Arizona Territory. Alina answered patiently, and Natalie learned that the Zane family had been in the area for 15 years, that Keller's father, Robert Zane, had been respected in the community, that Keller had a younger sister named Sarah who lived with their mother's relatives in Tucson. The ranch was about 8 miles west of town, not a huge operation but potentially profitable if managed well. "Why all the questions about the Zanes?" Alina asked one morning as they kneaded bread dough. "No reason," Natalie said quickly. "Just trying to learn about the area." Alina's knowing smile said she did not believe that for a moment, but she let it drop. Late July brought storms that turned the streets to mud and provided brief relief from the heat. Natalie had been in Wickenburg for 6 weeks and was settling into her new life. She had met several other women in town, including Mary Sutton, the doctor's wife, who had invited her to a ladies' social at the church. Natalie had declined politely. She was not ready for socializing, for the inevitable questions about her background and why an unmarried woman from Pennsylvania had come west alone. On the last Saturday in July, Alina sent her to the post office to mail letters and check for any incoming mail. The post office shared a building with the telegraph office, and as Natalie handed her letters to the clerk, the door burst open and Keller Zane strode in, his face drawn with worry. "I need to send a telegram to Dr. Hartwell in Phoenix," he said urgently. "It is an emergency." The clerk, a thin man named Albert Fisk, immediately reached for a telegram form. "What is the message, Mr. Zane? Tell him I need him to come to Wickenburg immediately." My ranch hand Miguel Garcia has been badly injured, crushed leg. Our local doctor says he cannot save the leg, but I have heard Dr. Hartwell has new techniques. Tell him I will pay whatever he asks." Albert wrote quickly, his pen scratching across the paper. "I will send this right away." Keller ran a hand through his hair, and Natalie could see the dust and exhaustion on his face. He looked like he had not slept in days. "How fast can I expect a response?" "If he is in Phoenix, probably by tonight. But whether he can come is another matter." Keller nodded grimly. "Send it." He turned to leave and nearly collided with Natalie, who had been standing frozen by the counter. "Excuse me, miss," he said, stepping aside. "It is fine," she managed. Then, surprising herself, she added, "I hope your friend will be all right." He looked at her properly for the first time, and she saw recognition flash across his face. "You are staying at the Pritchard boarding house. I saw you at the general store last month." "Yes, Natalie Zimmerman. Alina Pritchard is my aunt. Keller Zane." He touched his hat brim again. "Thank you for your concern. Miguel is a good man. He has worked for my family since I was a boy. A spooked horse kicked him into a fence post yesterday. I cannot lose him." The raw emotion in his voice caught Natalie off guard. This was not the detached courtesy men usually showed when discussing their employees. This was genuine fear and affection. "I will pray for him," she said, and meant it. Keller's expression softened slightly. "I appreciate that, Miss Zimmerman. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to get back to the ranch." He left quickly, and Natalie found herself staring after him. Albert cleared his throat. "Anything else, Miss Zimmerman?" "No, thank you." She took the letters Alina had received and walked back out into the bright sunlight. That evening she told Alina about the encounter. Her aunt nodded thoughtfully. "Miguel Garcia is a good man, been with the Zanes forever. His wife Rosa is lovely. They have 3 children. This will be devastating for the family if he loses his leg." "Is there really nothing the local doctor can do?" "Dr. Patterson is competent, but he is old-fashioned in his methods. If Keller is reaching out to this Dr. Hartwell, he must be desperate." Natalie went to bed that night with a prayer for Miguel Garcia on her lips, and she had to admit, thoughts of Keller Zane's worried blue eyes in her mind. 2 days later, word spread through town that Dr. Hartwell had arrived from Phoenix and had successfully operated on Miguel, saving his leg using some new technique involving metal pins and careful bone setting. The procedure had taken hours, and Miguel would need months of recovery, but he would keep his leg and, eventually, walk again. Natalie felt relief flood through her when she heard the news, though she told herself her concern was purely humanitarian. That Sunday, Alina convinced her to attend church, arguing that staying away would only fuel gossip about why she had come west. Natalie reluctantly agreed and found herself sitting in a pew in the small adobe church, trying to focus on the pastor's sermon rather than looking around to see if Keller Zane might be in attendance. He was not there, which made sense. He probably had not left Miguel's side since the surgery. She scolded herself for even looking and tried to focus on the hymns and prayers. After the service, several women approached to welcome her, including Mary Sutton, who renewed her invitation to the ladies' social. "We meet every other Wednesday," Mary explained. She was a plump, cheerful woman in her mid-30s with a kind smile. "It is nothing fancy, just tea and conversation. We would love to have you join us." Natalie found herself agreeing, partly to please Alina and partly because she realized that isolating herself completely was not healthy. She needed to build some kind of life here, even if it did not include romance. The following Wednesday, she attended her First Lady's social at Mary Sutton's home. There were 8 women present, ranging in age from early 20s to late 50s. They were friendly and welcoming, curious about Pennsylvania, but not pushy about why Natalie had come west. They discussed recipes, shared news about various town members, and talked about the upcoming Harvest Festival in September. One of the younger women, Catherine Miller, mentioned that her brother needed help organizing the festival's baking competition. "He is hopeless at planning such things," Catherine laughed. "He can run a freight business, but ask him to coordinate a pie contest and he falls apart." "I could help," Natalie heard herself say. "I enjoy organizing events." Catherine's face lit up. "Would you? That would be wonderful. Let me introduce you to James properly. He will be so relieved." And just like that, Natalie found herself becoming part of the community. She met with James Miller, a jovial man in his 30s, and helped him develop a plan for the baking competition, including categories, judging criteria, and prizes. She found she enjoyed the work, enjoyed having a purpose beyond simply trying to forget her past. August arrived with its brutal heat, and Natalie had been in Wickenburg for 2 months. She had not seen Keller Zane since their brief encounter at the post office, though she heard updates through town gossip. Miguel was recovering well. The cattle drive to Prescott had been successful, and Keller had paid off most of his debt to Henry Morrison and other merchants in town. The ranch was slowly becoming profitable again. One scorching afternoon, as Natalie was hanging laundry behind the boarding house, she heard horses approaching. She glanced up to see Keller riding down the alley, leading a second horse that carried Miguel, who was pale but smiling. They stopped near the back door and Alina hurried out. "Miguel, Rosa sent word you were coming to town. How are you feeling?" "Much better, Miss Alina," Miguel said in accented English. His leg was splinted and carefully positioned. "Dr. Hartwell says I will walk again in 4 or 5 months. It is a miracle." Keller helped Miguel down from the horse with practiced ease, supporting his weight while Miguel balanced on his good leg. Natalie found herself walking over without thinking. "Can I help?" Keller looked up, surprise crossing his face. "Miss Zimmerman, I did not realize you were here." "I live here," she reminded him gently. "At least for now. We just need to get Miguel inside," Keller explained. "He has an appointment with Dr. Patterson to check on the healing, but he wanted to stop here first to thank your aunt." Miss Alina sent food to the ranch every day during his recovery. "That is just like her," Natalie said, smiling at her aunt. Together, she and Keller helped Miguel into the boarding house's parlor, settling him on the sofa. Alina bustled off to get water and something to eat, despite Miguel's protests that he was fine. Natalie found herself alone with Keller for the first time, standing awkwardly in the parlor. "Your friend looks like he is healing well," she said, breaking the silence. "Thanks to Dr. Hartwell and a lot of prayer." Keller turned his hat in his hands. "Miss Zimmerman, I want to thank you for your kindness that day at the post office. I was not in the best state of mind, but your concern meant something." "It was nothing," Natalie said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the August temperature. Anyone would have been concerned. Perhaps, but not everyone would have offered prayers for a man they did not know. His blue eyes held hers, and Natalie felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in the wall she had so carefully built around her heart. She looked away first, disturbed by her reaction. "Well, I am glad he is recovering. If you will excuse me, I have laundry to finish." She hurried back outside before he could respond, her heart beating faster than it should. This was exactly what she did not need. She had come west to forget a man, not to find herself drawn to another one, no matter how kind his eyes or how genuine his concern for his friends. But over the next few weeks, she found Keller Zane impossible to ignore. He seemed to be in town more often, stopping by the boarding house to check on Miguel when Rosa brought him in for doctor visits. He was always polite, always respectful, but Natalie caught him watching her sometimes, a thoughtful expression on his face. In late August, he appeared at the boarding house on a Friday evening, cleaned up and wearing what were clearly his good clothes. Alina answered the door, and Natalie heard them talking in the front hall. "Is Miss Zimmerman available?" Keller asked. "I was hoping I might speak with her." Natalie's hands stilled over the dishes she was washing. Alina called for her, and she dried her hands slowly, trying to calm her racing heart before walking to the front hall. "Miss Zimmerman," Keller said, his hat in his hands again. "I know this is forward of me, but the town is having a dance tomorrow night, and I was wondering if you might allow me to escort you." Natalie opened her mouth to refuse, to explain that she was not interested in courtship or dances or anything that might lead to the kind of heartbreak she had so recently escaped. But Alina spoke first. What a lovely invitation. Natalie would be delighted to go. Would 7 o'clock be suitable? "Aunt Alina, I do not think 7 o'clock is perfect," Alina continued, ignoring Natalie's protest. "She will be ready." Keller looked between them, clearly picking up on the tension. "If Miss Zimmerman would rather not, I certainly understand. I do not wish to impose." This was Natalie's chance to refuse gracefully. She should take it. She should protect herself. But looking at Keller's face, at the hope and uncertainty in his eyes, she found herself saying, 7 o'clock will be fine." His smile transformed his face, making him look younger and impossibly handsome. "I will see you tomorrow evening then. Thank you, Miss Zimmerman." After he left, Natalie turned on her aunt. "Why did you do that? You know I am not ready for courting." "It is a dance, not a marriage proposal," Alina said calmly. "You have been here over 2 months, Natalie. You cannot hide forever. Besides, Keller Zane is a good man, the best kind of man. It will not hurt to spend one evening in his company." "I came here to forget about men and romance." "No, you came here to forget about one unworthy man who betrayed you. That does not mean you should close yourself off to every man forever. What Thomas did was terrible, but do not let him steal your future along with your past." Natalie wanted to argue, but Alina had already returned to the kitchen, leaving her standing in the hallway, wondering what she had just agreed to, and why the thought of spending an evening with Keller Zane made her feel nervous and excited in equal measure. The next evening, Natalie dressed carefully in her best gown, a deep green silk that brought out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. She pinned her dark hair up, leaving a few curls to frame her face. Alina lent her a lovely shawl, even though the August evening was warm. "You look beautiful," Alina said when Natalie came downstairs. "And before you say anything, remember that you deserve happiness. Do not punish yourself for Thomas's sins." Keller arrived precisely at 7, wearing dark trousers, a white shirt, and a vest. His wheat-colored hair was neatly combed, and he smelled faintly of soap and leather. When he saw Natalie, his eyes widened. "You look lovely, Miss Zimmerman." "Thank you. You look very nice as well." The dance was being held in the town hall, a large building that served multiple purposes for Wickenburg's community. By the time they arrived, it was already crowded with people, and a small band was playing lively music. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting warm light over the scene. Several people greeted Keller, and he introduced Natalie to those she had not yet met. She was surprised by how well-liked he seemed to be. Men clapped him on the shoulder, women smiled warmly at him, and everyone seemed genuinely pleased to see him out enjoying himself. "I do not get to town much for social events," he explained as he led her to the refreshment table. "The ranch keeps me busy most of the time. I imagine running a ranch is demanding work." "It is, but it is good work, honest work." He handed her a cup of punch. "I understand you have been helping James Miller organize the Harvest Festival. News travels fast in small towns." It does indeed. James says you have been a tremendous help. He also mentioned you might be taking the teaching position at the school. Natalie nodded. I met with the school board last week. They offered me the position starting in September. I will be teaching children aged 6 through 12. That is wonderful. We need a good teacher. The last one left to get married, moved to California with her husband. The band struck up a waltz, and Keller set down his cup. Would you do me the honor of dancing with me, Miss Zimmerman? She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. He led her onto the floor, his hand settling on her waist, his other hand holding hers gently. They began to move to the music, and Natalie was surprised by how well he danced, his movements confident and sure. You are a good dancer, she said. My mother insisted I learn. She said a gentleman should know how to properly escort a lady on the dance floor. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. She died when I was 19. Fever took her one winter. I am sorry. I lost my mother 3 years ago. It never quite stops hurting, does it? No, but the sharp edges dull over time. He guided her through a turn. Is your father still living? Yes, in Pennsylvania. He remarried last year, a widow from his church. I am happy for him, though it felt strange at first. They danced in comfortable silence for a moment, then Keller said quietly, May I speak plainly, Miss Zimmerman, Natalie? You may call me Natalie. Then you should call me Keller. He waited until she nodded. Natalie, I know you came to Wickenburg recently, and I have heard rumors that you left Pennsylvania under difficult circumstances. I do not know the details, and you do not owe me any explanation, but I want you to know that I am interested in getting to know you better. If that is something that might interest you as well, I would like to call on you properly. Natalie's first instinct was to refuse to protect herself. But looking into Keller's honest blue eyes, she found herself asking, Why? You barely know me. I know you are kind, because I saw your genuine concern for Miguel. I know you are brave, because you came west alone to start a new life. I know you are capable, because everyone in town speaks highly of the work you have done. And I know that when you smile, which you do not do nearly often enough, it lights up your whole face. That is enough to make me want to know more. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, though she blinked them back quickly. I am not looking for romance. I came here to escape from a painful situation involving a man I trusted who betrayed that trust. I am not ready to risk my heart again. I am not asking for your heart, Keller said gently. Not yet, anyway. I am just asking for the chance to be your friend, to spend time with you, to let you see who I am. If something more develops naturally, that would make me happy. But if friendship is all you can offer right now, I will take it gladly. It was such a reasonable request, so different from Thomas's overwhelming declarations of love, his demands for her attention, his need to possess her completely. I think I could manage friendship, she said slowly. Keller's smile was warm and genuine. Then that is where we will start. They danced 2 more dances. Then Keller got her another cup of punch, and they found seats along the wall, watching the other dancers and talking easily about safe topics. The ranch, the school, the upcoming harvest festival. Natalie found herself relaxing, laughing at Keller's stories about ranch mishaps and his cantankerous horse, Ranger, who had opinions about everything. He once refused to cross a stream because he did not like the color of the water, Keller explained, shaking his head. Spent 20 minutes arguing with him before I finally dismounted and led him across. Stubborn beast. But you love him, Natalie said, hearing the affection in Keller's voice. I do. He was my father's horse before he was mine. Having Ranger around is like having a piece of my father still with me. As the evening wore on, Natalie realized she was enjoying herself more than she had in months. Keller was easy company, never pushing, never demanding. He introduced her to more people, including Miguel's wife Rosa, a small, pretty woman with warm brown eyes who hugged Natalie like an old friend. "Thank you for your prayers for my Miguel," Rosa said in heavily accented English, "and for helping get him inside that day. God heard our prayers and sent Dr. Hartwell. Miguel will be himself again, thanks to God and to good friends like Mr. Keller and you." When Keller drove her home in his wagon at the end of the evening, the stars overhead were brilliant in the clear desert sky. They rode in comfortable silence until they reached the boarding house. "Thank you for a lovely evening," Natalie said as he helped her down from the wagon. "Thank you for giving me a chance." He held her hand a moment longer than necessary. "Might I call on you again? Perhaps we could have dinner together next Sunday after church if you are attending." "I will be attending, and dinner would be nice." He touched the brim of his hat. "Until Sunday then, Natalie." She watched him drive away, then went inside to find Alina waiting up with tea and a knowing smile. "Do not say anything," Natalie warned, but she could not keep the smile off her own face. "I do not need to say anything. Your face says it all." September arrived, bringing slightly cooler temperatures and the start of school. Natalie threw herself into teaching, discovering that she loved working with the children. She had 15 students of varying ages and abilities, from little Amy Harrison, who was just learning her letters, to 14-year-old James Cooper, who was already rating at an advanced level and helping the younger children with their arithmetic. True to his word, Keller called on her regularly, but he kept his promise about friendship. They had dinner together on Sundays, took walks around town when his ranch work allowed, and talked about everything from books to politics to dreams for the future. Natalie found herself looking forward to his visits, found herself thinking about him at odd moments during the day. He was different from Thomas in every way. Where Thomas had been smooth and polished, Keller was rough-edged but genuine. Where Thomas had made grand gestures, Keller showed his care through small, thoughtful actions. Bringing her wildflowers he had picked on his ride into town, fixing a loose board on the boarding house steps without being asked, remembering details from their conversations. The Harvest Festival arrived in late September, and Natalie's baking competition was a huge success. 23 women entered, and the judging took hours. Keller volunteered to be one of the judges, claiming he had extensive experience evaluating baked goods. "I eat a lot of pie," he explained seriously. "That makes me an expert." Natalie laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. As she watched him taste each entry with exaggerated concentration, making jokes with the other judges, she realized that somewhere along the way, her feelings had shifted from simple friendship to something more. The realization should have terrified her, but instead, it felt right, like coming home after a long journey. That evening, after the festival ended and the cleanup was done, Keller asked if he could walk her home. They took the long way, strolling through the quiet streets under the stars. "I have been doing some thinking," Keller said as they walked. "About us, about where this might be going." Natalie's heart beat faster. "What kind of thinking?" He stopped walking and turned to face her. "You came here to forget a man, and I've tried to respect that, tried to be patient and let you heal. But Natalie, I am falling in love with you, and I need to know if there is any chance you might feel the same way." The words hung in the air between them, and Natalie felt fear and hope war inside her. This was what she had been afraid of, this moment of vulnerability, of risk. But looking at Keller's earnest face, at the man who had been nothing but kind and patient and honest, she realized that not all risks ended in heartbreak. "I am terrified," she said honestly. "The last time I trusted my heart to someone, he destroyed it. I do not know if I can survive that kind of pain again." I cannot promise you will never feel pain, Keller said, taking her hands in his. Life has pain and loss and disappointment. But I can promise you that I will never deliberately hurt you, never betray your trust, never make you feel less than the amazing woman you are. I can promise you honesty, respect, and a love that will not fade when times get hard. Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks. I am falling in love with you too, and it scares me to death. Keller cupped her face gently, his thumbs wiping away her tears. Then let us be scared together. Let us build something strong enough to stand up to fear. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Natalie felt something inside her break open, all the carefully guarded pieces of her heart reaching toward him like flowers toward the sun. This was what love should feel like, not the desperate, possessive thing Thomas had offered, but something steady and true and real. They stood there in the starlight, holding each other, and Natalie felt the weight of the past finally begin to lift. She had come west to forget a man, but Keller Zane had made sure she would remember him forever, for all the right reasons. Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened. Keller came to town whenever he could, and on Saturdays, when Natalie had no school, he would sometimes take her out to the ranch. She fell in love with the land, with the wide open spaces and the mountains in the distance, with the sturdy ranch house that Keller's father had built and the dreams Keller had for making it all thrive. Miguel was walking again with the help of a cane, slowly but steadily, and he and Rosa welcomed Natalie warmly whenever she visited. Rosa taught her how to make tortillas and told her stories about Keller as a boy, mischievous and adventurous, always getting into some scrape or another. "He is a good man," Rosa said one afternoon as they worked in her kitchen. "Like his father, he deserves a good woman who will see his heart." "I do see it," Natalie said softly. "Every day I see it more clearly." In late October, Keller asked Natalie if she would like to go riding with him, just the two of them, up into the hills. She had learned to ride during her time in Arizona, though she was not as skilled as he was. He put her on his gentlest mare, Daisy, and they rode out early on a Sunday morning, the air cool and crisp, the sky impossibly blue. They rode for an hour, climbing into the foothills, until Keller stopped at a spot overlooking the valley. From here, they could see Wickenburg spread out below, the river gleaming in the morning sun, the mountains rising all around. "I wanted to bring you here," Keller said, dismounting and helping her down from Daisy. "This was my father's favorite spot. He used to come here when he needed to think or pray. He brought me here before he died and told me that if I ever found a woman I wanted to spend my life with, I should bring her here, to this place where earth and sky meet, and ask her properly." Natalie's breath caught as Keller took both her hands in his. "Natalie Zimmerman, I know we have only known each other for a few months, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are strong and kind and beautiful, inside and out. You make me want to be a better man. You make me believe in the future again. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you what real love looks like. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Natalie could not speak. She thought of herself 3 months ago, stepping off the train broken and determined never to trust a man again. She thought of how Keller had respected her boundaries, had become her friend before asking for more, had shown her through his actions what his words truly meant. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, I will marry you." Keller pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around, both of them laughing with pure happiness. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Natalie felt complete in a way she never had with Thomas. This was where she was meant to be, in the arms of this good, honest man, in this wild, beautiful land that had given her a second chance. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple but beautiful, a gold band with a single small diamond. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My father gave it to me before he died, said I should give it to the woman who held my heart. If you would rather have something different, we can." "It is perfect," Natalie interrupted, holding out her hand. He slipped it onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. They were married in November, in the same small church where Natalie had attended her first service in Wickenburg. Alina cried happy tears. Miguel and Rosa stood up with them, and what seemed like the entire town turned out to celebrate. Dr. Patterson was there, and Henry Morrison and James Miller and his sister Catherine, and all of Natalie's students with their families. After the ceremony, there was a celebration at the boarding house, with food and music and dancing. As Natalie waltzed with her new husband, she caught sight of herself in the mirror across the room. She looked radiant, truly happy in a way she had never been with Thomas. This was real. This was right. "What are you thinking?" Keller asked, following her gaze. "I am thinking that I came west to forget a man, and instead, I found one worth remembering forever." Keller pulled her closer. "I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret that." They moved into the ranch house, which Keller had spent weeks preparing for her arrival. He had repainted the bedroom, bought new curtains, and even acquired a bookshelf for all her books. Natalie threw herself into making it a home, learning the rhythms of ranch life, helping Rosa with the cooking and preserving, getting to know the ranch hands who worked for Keller. She continued teaching through the end of the school year, making the daily drive into town with Keller when their schedules aligned, or riding Daisy on her own when they did not. She loved her students, loved watching them learn and grow, but she also loved her new role as Keller's wife, as the lady of the ranch. Their first Christmas together was magical. Keller cut down a small pine tree from the mountains, and they decorated it with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments her students made. Alina came for Christmas dinner, along with Miguel and Rosa and their children. The house was full of laughter and love, and Natalie felt her heart swell with gratitude for this unexpected life she had built. In January, she discovered she was pregnant. She told Keller one evening as they sat by the fire, his arms around her, both of them content in the warm circle of light while wind howled outside. "I have some news," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." Keller's face went through several expressions in quick succession: shock, joy, wonder, and a touch of fear. "A baby? Really? We are going to be parents in late summer, the doctor thinks. Are you happy?" "Happy." He pulled her onto his lap, holding her carefully. "Natalie, I am beyond happy. I am terrified and thrilled and grateful. A baby. Our baby." He kissed her tenderly, and Natalie felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. This life, this love, this future, it was everything she had never dared to hope for after Thomas's betrayal. Keller had not just made her forget the man who broke her heart. He had shown her what love truly meant. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though the summer heat made the last few months challenging. Natalie had given up teaching for now, planning to return after the baby was old enough. Keller was attentive and tender, constantly worried about her comfort, driving her to distraction with his concern. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him when he tried to forbid her from hanging laundry. "I know, but I want to take care of you. Let me take care of you." How could she argue with that? Their son was born on a hot August evening, after a labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Rosa attended her, along with Dr. Patterson, and when Natalie finally held her baby in her arms, she wept with relief and overwhelming love. Keller came in moments later, dropping to his knees beside the bed. "Natalie, Are you all right? Is the baby? We have a son, she said, turning so he could see the tiny, red-faced infant swaddled in a blanket. We have a son, Keller. He reached out with one finger to touch the baby's impossibly small hand, and the infant's fingers closed around his. He is perfect. You are perfect. I love you so much. They named him Robert Michael Zane, Robert for Keller's father and Michael for Natalie's. Little Robbie, as they quickly began calling him, had his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. He was healthy and strong, with lungs that could wake the entire house when he was hungry. Natalie had never known she could love anyone as much as she loved this tiny person. Watching Keller with their son, seeing the gentleness in his strong hands as he held Robbie, the wonder in his face as he watched the baby sleep, made her fall in love with her husband all over again. The months passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights, but also in moments of pure joy. Robbie's first smile, his first laugh, his first attempts to roll over. Eleanor visited often, doting on her great-nephew. Miguel and Rosa's children, older now, came by to admire the baby and offer to help. When Robbie was 6 months old, Natalie returned to teaching, bringing the baby with her. The schoolhouse was small enough that she could keep an eye on him while teaching, and her students adored having a baby in the classroom. The older girls would help during lunch, playing with him and practicing the mothering skills they would need in their own futures. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch continued to prosper under Keller's management. He paid off the last of his father's debts and began expanding the herd. He hired 2 more ranch hands, good men who worked hard and treated Natalie with respect. The little ranch house rang with laughter and love. On their 2nd wedding anniversary, Keller took Natalie back to the spot in the hills where he had proposed. They left Robbie with Rosa for the afternoon and rode up into the mountains, just the 2 of them. It was November again, the air cool and crisp, the sky that brilliant blue that still took Natalie's breath away. 2 years, Keller said as they stood looking out over the valley. Sometimes it feels like you have always been here, and sometimes I cannot believe my luck that you said yes. It is not luck, Natalie said, leaning against him. It is the best decision I ever made. You showed me what real love looks like, Keller, patient and kind and true. You healed my heart and gave me a life I never dreamed possible. You did the same for me. After my father died, I was so focused on saving the ranch, on living up to his legacy, that I forgot to live my own life. Then you stepped off that train, determined and brave and trying so hard to protect your heart, and I knew I had to try, had to find a way to show you that not all men are unworthy of trust. You did more than show me, Natalie said, turning in his arms to face him. You gave me everything. A home, a family, a love that makes me stronger instead of smaller. I cannot imagine my life without you. They kissed as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. When they finally pulled apart, Natalie said, I have something to tell you. What is it? I am pregnant again. I found out last week. Another baby, Keller, a brother or sister for Robbie. Keller let out a whoop of joy that echoed across the hills, then picked her up and spun her around, making her laugh and beg him to put her down before they both fell over. Another baby. Natalie, this is wonderful. When? Next summer, the doctor thinks. June or July. They rode back to the ranch as the stars began to appear, talking excitedly about the future, about names and plans and where they would put another cradle. When they picked up Robbie from Miguel and Rosa's cottage, the little boy reached for his mother immediately, and Natalie held him close, breathing in his sweet baby smell. This was her life now. Not the one she had planned back in Pennsylvania, but something infinitely better. She thought of Thomas sometimes, but without pain. just a distant curiosity about how she could have ever believed what they had was love. He had done her a favor by betraying her, had forced her onto a path that led her to Keller, to Wickenburg, to this wild, beautiful life. Their daughter, Emma Grace Zane, was born on a warm June evening in 1881. She had Keller's wheat-colored hair and Natalie's hazel eyes, and from the moment she entered the world, she was fearless. Even as a baby, she was more adventurous than Robbie, always trying to explore, to climb, to reach things she should not touch. With 2 young children, Natalie gave up teaching permanently, though she continued to tutor students who needed extra help. The ranch house, which had once seemed so big, now felt perfectly sized, filled with the sounds of children playing and growing. Robbie adored his little sister, protective of her even as a toddler himself. Natalie would find them in the nursery, Robbie patting Emma's back when she cried, or trying to share his toys with her even when she was too young to play with them. The years flowed past like the river through Wickenburg, sometimes rushing and tumultuous, sometimes peaceful and steady, but always moving forward. Keller expanded the ranch further, buying adjacent land when it became available. Miguel's leg had healed completely, and he managed the day-to-day operations of the ranch, allowing Keller to focus on the business side of things. Eleanor grew older but remained active and sharp, still running the boarding house with help from a young woman named Alice, whom she had hired. She was a constant presence in their lives, always ready with advice or help or simply a listening ear. When Robbie was 5 and Emma was 3, Natalie discovered she was pregnant for the 3rd time. This pregnancy was harder than the first 2, with more sickness and exhaustion, but she and Keller were thrilled nonetheless. Their second son, James Theodore Zane, arrived in February of 1883 during a rare snowstorm. He was smaller than his siblings had been, but healthy and strong, with his mother's dark hair and his father's blue eyes. From the start, he was the quieter one, content to observe the world around him, thoughtful even as a baby. 3 children kept Natalie busy from dawn until well past dark, but she loved every chaotic moment. Keller was a devoted father, always finding time despite the demands of the ranch to play with his children, to read them stories, to teach them about the land and the animals and the values he believed in. One evening, when James was about 6 months old, Natalie was sitting in the rocking chair by the nursery window, nursing the baby while watching Keller play with Robbie and Emma in the yard outside. The sun was setting, casting golden light over everything, and she felt such overwhelming contentment that she had to blink back tears. This was everything. This moment, this life, these people she loved more than her own breath. She had come west broken and afraid, determined never to risk her heart again, and instead she had found a love so deep and true it still amazed her. Keller looked up and saw her watching. Even from this distance, she could see his smile, could feel the love that connected them across the space. He said something to the children, then headed inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, entering the nursery and sitting on the floor near her chair. "You have that look on your face." "What look?" "The one that says you are thinking deep thoughts." Natalie smiled. "I was just thinking about how different my life is from what I expected. 5 years ago, I was getting on a train, running away from pain and disappointment. I thought I was running toward nothing, just away from something. But I was running toward you, toward this family, toward this life. I was running toward everything that matters." Keller reached up to take her free hand. "I thank God for Thomas Whitmore sometimes. Is that terrible of me? No, because I do too. He hurt me, but he also freed me to find real love. To find you. The cowboy who made sure you would remember him forever," Keller said, grinning. You certainly did that. I could never forget you, Keller Zane. You are written on my heart in permanent ink." James finished nursing and Natalie burped him, then handed him to Keller, who cradled the baby against his chest with practiced ease. "I love our life," he said simply. "Every messy, chaotic, beautiful moment of it. So do I." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. The children grew, Robbie becoming tall and serious like his father, Emma remaining adventurous and bold, James developing into a gentle, thoughtful boy who loved books and learning. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the area. Keller's reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread, and buyers came from as far as California to purchase his stock. Natalie had never been happier. She had found her place in the world, her purpose. She was a wife, a mother, a member of a community that valued her. She helped organize church events, continued to mentor children who struggled with reading, and became known for her kindness and wisdom. When Robbie was 10, Emma was 8, and James was 6, the children began asking about their mother's life before Arizona. One evening at dinner, Emma asked, "Did you always live here, Mama?" "No, sweetheart. I was born in Pennsylvania on the other side of the country. I came here when I was 22. "Why did you come?" Robbie asked, his blue eyes curious. Natalie glanced at Keller, who gave her an encouraging nod. "I came because I needed a fresh start. I had been hurt by someone I trusted, and I needed to go somewhere new to heal." "How did you meet Papa?" James asked. "I saw him in the general store, arguing with Mr. Morrison about supplies," Natalie said, smiling at the memory. "Then I saw him again at the post office, and he was so worried about Miguel, who had been hurt. I admired how much he cared about his friend. Then he asked me to a dance, and I said yes, even though I was scared." "Scared of Papa?" Emma looked shocked. "But he is not scary." "I was scared of being hurt again," Natalie explained. "But your father was very patient with me. He showed me that not all people are untrustworthy, that some people keep their promises. He taught me what real love looks like." "What does real love look like?" Robbie asked, leaning forward with interest. Keller answered before Natalie could. "Real love is patient and kind. It is honest even when honesty is hard. It is putting someone else's needs before your own because their happiness matters more than your comfort. It is showing up every day, through good times and hard times, and choosing to stay, to work through problems instead of running away. Real love is what your mother and I have built together and what we hope to teach you children." That night, after the children were in bed, Natalie and Keller sat on the porch, watching the stars. "Thank you," Natalie said quietly. "For what?" "For being everything you promised to be. For showing our children what love and commitment look like. For healing my heart and giving me this beautiful life." "Thank you for saying yes to that dance," Keller replied, pulling her close. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who had more debts than money but plenty of love to give. Best decision I ever made." As they sat together in the comfortable silence of two people who know each other deeply, Natalie reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had come west to forget a man, to escape pain and betrayal. But Keller Zane had given her something far more valuable than forgetfulness. He had given her a love worth remembering, a story worth telling, a life worth living. The years continued their steady march. Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was 70, leaving the boarding house to Alice, who had become like a daughter to her. The whole town mourned, but Natalie took comfort in knowing her aunt had lived a full, adventurous life and had been surrounded by love at the end. Miguel retired from active ranch work when his old injury began bothering him in his 60s, but he and Rosa remained in their cottage on the ranch property. Keller made sure they had everything they needed, considering them family rather than employees. Their children were grown now, with families of their own, and the grandchildren often visited, filling the ranch with even more laughter and life. When Robbie turned 18, Keller made him a full partner in the ranch operations. The young man had inherited his father's work ethic and his mother's thoughtfulness, and he was already showing himself to be a skilled cattleman. Emma, at 16, was learning bookkeeping and helping Natalie with the household accounts. She had also developed an interest in veterinary medicine, unusual for a woman but encouraged by her parents who believed their daughter could do anything she set her mind to. James, at 14, was showing signs of wanting to attend college back east, drawn to literature and history rather than ranching. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, James announced, "I have been thinking about my future. I would like to attend university and study law. I want to come back here and help people, help settle land disputes fairly, help new settlers understand their rights." Keller and Natalie exchanged glances, then Keller nodded. "If that is your dream, son, we will find a way to make it happen. Not every child has to follow their parents' path. We want you to find the life that makes you happy." "Really?" James looked surprised. "I thought you would want me to stay on the ranch." "The ranch is here if you want it," Keller said, "but I want you to choose your own path, just like your mother chose hers when she came west." After dinner, Natalie found Keller in the stable, checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. She slipped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "You are a good father." "I am trying to be. Did you see James's face when I said he could go to university? I think he expected a fight. Most fathers would insist their sons stay and work the family business. You are not most fathers." Keller turned to face her, pulling her into his arms. "I want our children to be happy and fulfilled, whatever that looks like for them. You taught me that, you know. When you came here, you could have stayed bitter and closed off. Instead, you chose to heal, to open yourself to new possibilities. You chose happiness. I want our children to make that same choice, to find their own happiness wherever it leads them." Natalie stood on tiptoe to kiss him. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" "Not in the last few hours. I was starting to worry." She laughed and swatted his arm playfully. "I love you, Keller Zane, more today than yesterday, less than I will tomorrow." "That is the kind of mathematics I can support," he said, grinning. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Natalie thought about the girl she had been, stepping off the train in Wickenburg all those years ago. That Natalie had been wounded and wary, determined to protect herself at all costs. She had seen love as something dangerous, something that led only to pain. But this Natalie, the woman she had become, knew better. She knew that love, real love, was the greatest risk and the greatest reward. She knew that vulnerability was not weakness but strength. She knew that choosing to trust again after betrayal was an act of courage. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that Keller Zane was the best thing that had ever happened to her. The children grew and pursued their dreams. Robbie married a rancher's daughter from Prescott, a strong, capable woman named Sarah who fit perfectly into their family. They had their first child, a daughter named Alina after Natalie's aunt, when Natalie and Keller became grandparents at 47 and 49, respectively. Emma did go to study veterinary medicine, one of only a handful of women in the field. She eventually returned to Wickenburg and opened a practice, serving the ranches and farms in the area. She married later, at 28, to a fellow veterinarian she met during her studies, and they worked together building their practice. James attended university in Boston, studied law, and returned to Arizona as he had promised. He opened a practice in Phoenix, but visited Wickenburg regularly. He married a teacher he met through friends, and they had 2 sons who loved visiting their grandparents' ranch. Through it all, Keller and Natalie remained the constant center, the foundation upon which their family was built. They grew older together, silver threading through their hair, laugh lines deepening around their eyes, their bodies showing the wear of decades of hard work. But their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened, becoming richer and more precious with each passing year. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Keller surprised Natalie with a trip back to the hills, to the place where he had proposed all those years ago. Their children had conspired to make it happen, taking over all the ranch responsibilities for the day so their parents could have time alone. They rode up the familiar trail, older now and moving more slowly, but still capable and strong. When they reached the overlook, Natalie gasped. Keller had arranged for a small table to be set up, complete with a white tablecloth, a bouquet of wildflowers, and a picnic basket filled with her favorite foods. "How did you manage this?" she asked, delighted. "Robbie helped. He rode up here before dawn to set everything up." Keller helped her dismount and led her to the table. 30 years, Natalie. 30 years of marriage, 3 children, 4 grandchildren so far, countless memories, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. They ate and talked and laughed, reminiscing about their years together. They talked about the early days when money was tight and the future uncertain. They remembered the births of each of their children, the terror and joy of becoming parents. They recalled funny moments and sad ones, challenges overcome and dreams achieved. "You ever think about him?" Keller asked as they watched the sun begin its descent. "Thomas. Not in years," Natalie answered honestly. "He is like a character in a book I read long ago, someone who existed but has no real impact on my life now. Whatever pain he caused me led me here to you, and I cannot regret the path that brought me to this life." "I am glad he was a fool," Keller said, taking her hand, "because his foolishness was my greatest fortune." "Mine too," Natalie agreed. "I came west to forget a man, but instead, I found one worth remembering forever. You kept your promise, Keller Zane. You showed me what real love looks like every single day for 30 years. And I will keep showing you for however many years we have left," he promised, pulling her close and kissing her with the same tenderness he had shown on their wedding day 3 decades earlier. As they rode back to the ranch in the golden light of sunset, Natalie felt complete peace. Her life had not turned out anything like she had planned back in Pennsylvania all those years ago, but it had turned out infinitely better. She had faced her fears, taken risks, and been rewarded with a love story more beautiful than any she could have imagined. The ranch house came into view, smoke rising from the chimney, lights glowing in the windows. Their children's families were there, gathered to celebrate with them, and Natalie could see small figures running around the yard, her grandchildren playing in the fading light. "Ready to go face the chaos?" Keller asked, grinning. "Always, as long as you are beside me." "Forever, Natalie. I will be beside you forever." And he was. They lived many more years together, growing old gracefully, surrounded by family and love. They watched their grandchildren grow and welcomed great-grandchildren before the end. The ranch continued to prosper under Robbie's management, and the Zane name became synonymous with integrity and quality throughout Arizona. When Keller passed away at 78, with Natalie holding his hand and their children gathered around, his last words were, "Thank you for saying yes." And when Natalie followed him 2 years later at 80, her last thoughts were of a young cowboy asking her to dance, of kind blue eyes and a patient heart, of a love that had healed her broken spirit and given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. The story of how Natalie Zimmerman came west to forget a man, and how Keller Zane made sure she would remember him forever became a family legend, passed down through generations. Their descendants would tell it to their children and grandchildren, a testament to the power of second chances, the courage it takes to love again after betrayal, and the beautiful life that can be built when two people choose each other every single day. In the end, it was not about forgetting or remembering the wrong man. It was about finding the right one and having the courage to take his hand and walk into an unknown future together. That was the real story, the one worth telling, the one that mattered. Natalie had come west broken and afraid, but she had found healing in the wild Arizona territory, found purpose in teaching and motherhood, and found a love so true and deep that it transformed everything it touched. And in a small cemetery overlooking the valley near Wickenburg, two headstones stood side by side, marking the resting place of Keller and Natalie Zane. The inscription was simple. Together forever, they built a love worth remembering. And in the town they had called home, in the ranch that still bore their name, in the hearts of their descendants, their love story lived on. A reminder that sometimes the best love stories are the ones we never planned, the ones that find us when we are not looking, the ones that heal us and make us whole.